In this video, we're looking at UFC Vegas 100. I'm going to give you my predictions for each one of these fights, and as always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. At the top of the card, we have Magny fighting Carlos Prates, and in our main event, this is very much the hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby meme in real life. Now, if you've watched this channel before, you've watched me break down Magny before, I'm going to preface this by saying I got a great deal of respect for Neil. Dude's been fighting at a very high level for a very long time, since 2013. He's won 22 fights in the UFC. Not many people are going to be able to do that. When you look at the guys that he's faced, like former champions, hot prospects, never says no to anybody, you can't not respect what Magny's done in the sport. But I'm going to keep it a stack with you watching. I'm not going to talk about this fight just for the sake of talking about it. I once had a mentor tell me you shouldn't have a meeting just for the sake of having a meeting. So I won't take up too much of your time with this week's main event. Carlos Prates all day, every day. He's looking like one of the best strikers in the division right now. Beautiful Muay Thai technique. You would expect that from someone who's got it tatted on his chest. He's adapted that style well into MMA because in Muay Thai you see guys tend to keep their feet pretty close, stand very tall, but in MMA you keep a wider stance, a lower stance because of the takedown. But Prates does still do a lot of the Muay Thai stuff. You notice it with the angles when he's throwing knees to the body, coming in at that 45 degree. He throws a nice long teep to the body. You see him throwing inside leg kicks to the lead leg just above the knee to kind of open you up. So the dude's a monster, one of the best fighters at 170 pounds, maybe the best striker right now at 170 pounds, repping the hottest gym in the game today in the Fighting Nerds. It's easy this week. Give me the nightmare. Give me Carlos Prates to win this fight by knockout. And real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how it works. In the co-main event spot, we have Cody Garbrandt. He's fighting Miles Johns this week. Tough read for this fight at bantamweight for a couple of reasons. Cody no love's coming off that loss to Davis and Figueiredo, where we picked him to win. We thought he was going to spring the upset, and he was looking decent until the fight went to the mat, and then Davis and Figueiredo never looked back. He ends up getting submitted in that fight in the second round. That fight snapped a small winning streak that he was on as well. Now, that's a former champion. Do I completely lose faith in him? Not so much, but we know at this point what Cody Garbrandt is. He's got good boxing, good offensive and defensive wrestling, great speed, and you're going to see that in the footwork and in the hands. But he's not the same guy that he was when he first got into the UFC. He's never going to be that champion again. He's not going to be that knockout artist again. He was an elite bantamweight at one point. That's not the case anymore. His chin's failed him many times. He's lost fights because of low output, and most recently he was out grappled. On the other side, we haven't seen much of that from Miles Johns, to be fair. Yeah, he's lost in the UFC, but he is in his fighting prime. He's coming off of a handful of wins, and what's important about these wins is all of them have gone the distance, and his last loss was against John Castaneda, where he just gassed and gassed hard and ended up losing. So there were a lot of question marks surrounding his gas tank. It looks like he shored those things up. He's been very efficient with his energy, and as a result he's not gassing out, but he's being efficient. He's also not throwing anything. His output tends to be super low, and for Cody Garbrandt, despite having the fast hands, the crisp boxing, he also tends to be lower output as well. You start looking through the numbers of these Cody Garbrandt fights, it would shock you how few punches he's actually landed. So unfortunately, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a good chance that this fight is going to be basura grande. There's going to be a lot of waiting to counter, waiting for the perfect opening, staying out of harm's way for both of these guys, because if you fight Cody Garbrandt, you're always going to be mindful of the power, and if you're Cody Garbrandt, you better be mindful of anything coming back your way, because old No Love's been wobbled more than a table with one short leg, so he's always on defense now. He knows that that big shot can put him out at any time. So you got two guys that probably aren't going to be able to wrestle one another effectively, two guys that don't throw a whole lot of strikes, two guys that are going to try to stay out of harm's way as best as they can. Again, the fight's probably not going to be all that great, and it's going to put the judges in a tough spot. I think a split decision is on the table here. People aren't going to be happy with the scorecards one way or the other, but this is going to be a closely contested fight. So with that, there are a few things in play. First would be the price. Cody Garbrandt's the underdog, so in a close fight, I think that there's some value there. Second would be the showmanship, potentially, coming from Garbrandt. You don't really see that from Miles Johns. He keeps everything pretty professional. But Cody No Love might start feeling himself, land a couple of leg kicks, land a counter, get out of the way of a strike, and start showboating, start taunting, and give the illusion that he is in the lead more than he might actually be. And lastly, it would come down to level of competition. And we talked about this last week with Pedro Munoz and Amin Zahabi. Level of competition is not everything, but I do think that it's important here, because when you look at the guys that Garbrandt's losing to, these are champions. He's the best fighters in the division, and guys that he's beaten recently, they're not on that level. I think Miles Johns is closer to those guys than he is to those former champions. So with that, I will take the dog here. Respect the face tat. Give me Cody No Love to win this fight. I think he wins by decision. I think it's going to be a split decision. And Cody Garbrandt might find himself in the official betting article this week. The betting article last week absolutely crushed. The community parlay that we put on the community tab on the website hit multiple legs, and the biggest one being plus 5,300, actually slightly better than that. So those of you that are on the site, you cashed out. Picks did well last week, so that's going to happen. The picks do well, the bets do well, the community parlay does well, and we've hit several of those throughout the year. I think that might be the third or fourth time we've done that. So you've paid for your membership many times over, not just for the month, but for a year, and some of you for multiple years. And the membership's going to include the official betting article, the DFS strategy guide, a lineup optimizer, data model, tools, projections, things like that. Last week during the DFS strategy guide, I'd said that you don't want to target a fight. You don't even want to target the heavyweight fight. You want to target Cody Gibson specifically. Cody Gibson went out there, did the damn thing. Missed on the prop of the week. We missed Cody Gibson by submission at plus 350. Bad beat there, but it happened. Still had a fantastic week. One of the best weeks of the year. Very happy, and hopefully we can keep that up this week. So all of that is on KunithMMA.com. That's linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. Next, we have a fight between Gerald Meerschaer. He's fighting Reiner de Ridder this week. De Ridder making his UFC debut. He had a long career with ONE FC, won a couple of titles over there as well, but left the promotion after back-to-back losses to now champion Antonelli Mikhailin. And that dude's a problem. That's a big boy, and I don't really fault him too much for losing those fights, but he did get finished in both of them. The first, he got knocked out cold in the first round. In the second fight, he said no mas. And that was just a minute or so into the third round. He wouldn't get back up to his feet. So I don't love to see that, which makes this one interesting, because if you don't know who de Ridder is, he is a jiu-jitsu guy. He wants to get to the clinch, drag you down, trip you down, just get you on the mat any way he can, because he's going to stay super busy in top position, ground and pound, which of course opens up opportunities for submissions, and that's how he does his best work. That's how he wins fights. And he typically gets guys out of there pretty quickly with that style, and that's what he's going to look to do against GM3 this week. GM3, who has been taken down before, many times actually, doesn't have great takedown defense, but he also doesn't mind being taken down. He'd almost prefer it, because once guys are down there in his world, it's hard to deal with. But we've also seen guys take Gerald Meerschaer down and just stay safe in top position, and as a result, he ends up losing the fight. But that's what makes it tricky. That's not de Ridder's game. He's not looking to grind out a win, stay safe in top position. He's looking to finish. And if you're in his shoes, just think about how sweet it would be to get a submission win over Gerald Meerschaer, get a win over the guy who has the most submission wins in UFC middleweight history. It'd be quite the feather in the cap, and he's a heavy favorite here, and if you watch the fights, it's hard to argue with. Outside of those two losses, he's been really nothing short of dominant. Now for Gerald Meerschaer, he tends to win fights when guys slow down and he's able to get on top. But what if de Ridder just stays on top and doesn't slow down? Is there enough offense from GM3's back to get him out of there? I don't think that there is. But if de Ridder starts to fade, say in the second round, it's a wrap. You can't get tired in front of this guy. And I think that's a very likely outcome here, because he's making his UFC debut. We see fighters gas out and underperform in their UFC debut all the time. He's also massive. He's 6'4", fighting at 185 pounds. He's doing this for the first time in nearly 7 years. He's fought at heavyweight more recently than he's fought at middleweight. So it'll be his first time fighting in America, down this weight class that he hasn't competed in years now, making his UFC debut against a guy who has made a career off of being hard to kill and coming back and winning late. All things considered, the line seems a bit wide for this. On top of that, he might actually be at a striking disadvantage in this fight, believe it or not. And if his expectation is I'm going to go out there and quickly submit GM3, that doesn't really happen. The only guy that's ever submitted Gerald Meerschaer was prime Jack Hermanson, and that was with a guillotine choke. Reiner de Ridder's never hit a guillotine in MMA. So I'll take the dog shot here, just like we did last time with GM3 when he fought Edmund Shabazian, because things weren't going his way until they were. And I could see that happening again this week. We've seen that time and time again with GM3, and I could see him playing spoiler, weathering that early storm, taking over late, spoiling the debut for de Ridder. Give me GM3 to win this fight by submission. Next, we have a fight between Karolina Kowaliewicz. She's fighting Denis Gomes this week. 15-year age gap in the strawweight bout. Scary times. 24-year-old Denis Gomes bringing a lot of power, bringing a lot of momentum to Karolina's front door. If you ask her right now, she probably says, I'm Slim Shadiest, I'm the real shady. We saw her cash as an underdog last time out against Eduardo Mora, who was looking to wrestle. We picked against her in that fight because we thought Eduardo Mora's big ass was going to be able to take her down consistently and submit her. We saw that Angela Hill was able to get her down pretty easily, but Denis Gomes says, no, I went back in the lab, worked on my craft, I got better. So for her to come back, face a bigger, undefeated opponent who's looking to get the fight in a spot that previously she looked weak, speaks volumes to the preparation, speaks volumes to the improvements that she's making at only 24 years old. On top of that, she's got God-given power. We see her spin jaws in these divisions unlike anybody else right now. Now for Karolina Kowaliewicz, been there, done that, faced some of the best fighters in the company's history. And many of them, if you start going through her resume, are better than Denis Gomes at this stage in her career, but Karolina's past it. She went on a 4-fight winning streak before dropping her last one, but these wins were against Felice Herrig, Silvana Gomez Juarez, Vanessa Demopoulos, Diana Belbizia. I'd expect Denis Gomes to run through that group. And I think Karolina's in a really tough spot this week. I know she's a big underdog, but it's justified because she gets hit a lot. You can't do that against a fighter that's bringing this much power. And I don't expect her to be able to get D Gomes down to the mat consistently. So I'll take the younger fighter, the more potent finisher to win. I think she ends up hurting Karolina early and probably finishes her in the first or second round. So give me D Gomes to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Ricky Turcios fighting Bernado Sopaj this week. Sopaj makes his second walk in the UFC. First fight was unforgettable. Makes his debut against Vinicius Oliveira, steps in on short notice, hell of a fight, ends up eating the cleanest flying knee one can eat, and gets brutally knocked out in the third round. He was pretty gassed at that point, but he was giving a good account of himself up until that point, fighting at a crazy pace, but making the trip all the way over to Vegas, fighting that kind of opponent at that pace. Tough stuff, hard to do. But he grappled well in that fight. Made a few mistakes here and there, ends up losing because of it, but I can give him a pass. Debut, short notice, great opponent, didn't get boat raced. It was a competitive fight. On the other side, Ricky Turcios is coming off a loss to Raul Rosas Jr., where he got taken down and just worked on the mat, and that happens in these Ricky Turcios fights. Really poor takedown defense throughout his UFC run. He got taken down 6 times by Brady Heastand, arguably should have lost that fight. 7 times by Kevin Natividad, 4 times in 7 minutes against Raul Rosas Jr. Anybody who's wanted him to the mat is able to get him there. Bernado Sopaj is looking to do exactly that. He wants to wrestle, and he has the ideal opponent for that kind of fight. If Ricky Turcios landed with more power or did a better job of threatening submissions, I'd give him a shot here, but it seems like he just does a lot of surviving. He's just moving a lot in there, and while that's great and you can tire guys out, over 3 rounds against a guy who gassed out last time, so probably is like, I'm never doing that again, never gassing out, at least on this next one. I don't see how that's going to work out for him. Again, I love how he doesn't like settle for bad positions, but I think Bernardo Sopaj is going to be able to get him down, actually be shocked with how easy it is to get his opponent down this week. Just stay on top, maintain a strong pace, and edge him out in a decision here. So give me Bernardo Sopaj to win this fight on the scorecards. Give me Bernardo Sopaj to win by decision. Next, we have a fight between Luana Pinheiro. She's fighting Gillian Robertson this week. I love me some chalk women's MMA. And this is worm food for Gillian Robertson. I think Luana Pinheiro is going to sleep where the crabs sleep. We call decisions for what they are on this channel. I don't care if it says split and somebody won. If they lost, they lost. And we go and we check and we make sure that that's the case. You see a split decision win over Michelle Waterson for Luana Pinheiro. She lost. So she's effectively on a 3-fight losing streak, and she's got decent power in her hands, but that's really the only advantage she probably has in this fight. Gillian Robertson gets her opponents to the ground and smashes them. She's one of the most potent finishers in the women's divisions today, and the only time she loses is when she comes across wrestlers who are stronger wrestlers than she is. In this fight, however, I think she has the edge in wrestling, definitely has the edge in grappling, and most certainly has the edge in cardio. She's the big favorite here, and it's justified. She should be the big favorite here, especially with the gloves that the UFC has nowadays. People don't get hurt. Knockouts are few and far between, so it minimizes the small puncher's chance that Luana Pinheiro already had. So I'll take the favorite to do what she does, get in top position, ground and pound her way to victory, maybe lock up a submission. Either way, she's getting this done inside the distance. Give me Gillian Robertson to win this fight inside the distance. Next, we have a fight between Mansur Abdul-Malik. He's fighting Dusko Todorovic this week. It's been a while since we've seen Dusko in action. Suffered what I believe was a torn ACL against Christian Leroy Duncan last time out. You never want to see a fight end that way, and he's been out of competition a while because of it. And this game is such a cold game because now he has to return to action against Abdul-Malik, undefeated prospect, 100% finish rate, coming off of a statement win on Contender Series in this very building. So the UFC is basically like, hey Dusko, how's that leg feeling? Is it all right, buddy? It's good? Okay, you see that door over there? Could you walk through that? Could you walk through that door for me? And Dusko's like, oh, the one that says Lion's Den right above it? And they're like, yeah, that one. Don't mind the sign. Just go in. It's a setup, ladies and gentlemen. Dusko Todorovic is a lamb. I think that Abdul-Malik moves to 7-0 this week, keeps the finishing streak alive, likely with an early knockout. Dusko's chin has been touched by an angel before. And Abdul-Malik generates a lot of power when he's in top position. So I'll take the Contender Series fella because it's a layup this week. Give me Mansur Abdul-Malik to win this fight by knockout. Next, we have a fight between two guys who really need to win here. You've got Charles Radtke fighting Matthew Semelsberger. Matthew Semelsberger, though, he does need the win a little bit more. But does he want it more is the ultimate question. You might be thinking, Kunith, why does he need it more? Well, I'm going to tell you, Needle Nose, just relax. He needs it more because he's on a 3-fight losing streak, and he's close to getting cut from the promotion if he doesn't probably knock Charles Radtke out this week. His most recent loss, he was smothered by the wrestling pressure of Preston Parsons. As a result, he lost every round. Before that, he got knocked out late with a spinning back elbow against Uros Medic in a fight that he was winning. I remember that card well. That was the card that was headlined by Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier. We absolutely smashed that card. We hit basically the entire card on a parlay. Before that, he lost a split decision, frankly a bad decision, against Jeremiah Wells because he was killing Wells. Every time he landed, he looked like he was about to knock him out, but he gave up bad takedowns in bad situations, ends up losing on the scorecards. You can't hate the score. And he's a big, powerful, strong, athletic guy who can put anybody out, but his recent losses, you have to call the fight IQ into question. Does he know how to win fights at the highest level anymore? I'm not so sure. Now, on the other side, Charles Radtke, coming off that loss to Carlos Prates, no shame in that at all. Before that, he brutalized Gilbert Urbina, who might not be UFC caliber. He's just way more physical than him, but he went life or death in his debut against Blood Diamond, who currently sits at 3-4 and left the UFC on 3 losses, no wins. So the jury's still very much out on Chuck Buffalo. I don't know how good he is. Now, for Matthew Semelsberger, what I do know is that he's longer on experience, better experience at that. He's younger, he's bigger, he's lost fights because of bad fight IQ rather than just getting ran over. And to kind of compare him to Dustin Stoltzfus last week, I think he's better than his record would suggest. He's the kind of guy who is going to go out there, make mistakes, and lose more fights in the UFC than he's going to win because of those mistakes, but it doesn't mean he can't get a win in the UFC. So if you just keep basically pulling the lever, eventually you're going to get it right with Matthew. And I don't know if Charles Radtke is really able to put him in bad positions like we've seen other guys do. I think if anything, he's going to try to work him up to the fence, but he's going to get surprised by the strength of Semelsberger in the clinch. So I'm going to go with semi here because he's got them sledgehammers at the end of his arms. He can land that at any point and change the fight. So I'm going to take the dog here to get the much needed win. I think he keeps his feet. I think he keeps his range. I think he lands heavy strikes. And I think he gets Chuck Buffalo out of there probably in the 3rd round. Give me Matthew Semelsberger to win by knockout. Next, we have a fight between Cody Gibson and Damon Blackshear. Damon Blackshear's looking like some open your mind up and listen to me, Kendrick. Damon Blackshear's coming in as a pretty big favorite, but why? Why should he be a big favorite? Cody Stamann's coming off of back-to-back losses, but so is Blackshear. Stamann cleanly lost all 3 rounds against Taylor Lappy loose last time out, and he just couldn't get takedowns. He got outstruck. Taylor Lapilus couldn't do that to a lot of guys, so it's not a big deal. Before that, he lost the decision to Douglas Silva de Andrade, where he had a good 3rd round, got a knockdown in that round, ended up winning that round, but he didn't do enough in the first 2. Why? Because he couldn't get the takedown and he got outstruck. That's going to be Cody Stamann forever. If he's not getting takedowns, if he's not just controlling somebody on the mat, he's going to lose. He's not a finisher. He's not going to knock guys out consistently. Knocked out Eddie Wineland. I'm gonna keep those opinions to myself. Now for Damon Blackshear, he's coming off of back-to-back losses as well. Last time out was knocked out basically by the first punch that Montel Jackson threw, which hurt me because I was dying to see Blackshear in action. I was dying to bet on him, and then he gets cold-cocked in seconds, kills me. Before that, he lost a fight that he won against Mario Bautista coming off of a week's notice. Not even, it was more like a 2 or 3 day notice. Bad decision in that one. But in both of those fights, now he's lost, and that puts him at 2-4 in the division. Now, most of the time, you see a guy in a run like that and you think he's no good, but you look at these losses. Yusuf Zalal in his UFC debut, unbeaten Farid Basharat, top bantamweight Mario Bautista on 4 days notice, and possibly the biggest puncher at 135 pounds right now in Montel Jackson. Murderer's row of UFC competition. Cody Stamann would look very out of place on that list. Damon Blackshear comes into this one with a huge size advantage. You look at the reach advantage that he has there, nearly 8 inches. The height advantage, Oscar, that's wrong. That's fucking wrong. He's not 5'2". He's 5'10", and I was told that you were missing edits last week. Now you're writing the wrong thing on the presentation. You're on thin ice. He's the bigger man. He's the younger man. Huge reach advantage. So when they are on the feet, he's going to pick Cody Stamann apart. And I think if the fight hits the mat, it's because Damon Blackshear wants it there. So we'll lay chalk on Damon Blackshear to get it done this week. I think he wins on the scorecards. Give me Damon Blackshear by decision. Next, we have a fight between Melissa Mullins. She's fighting Klaudia Sygula this week. I'm going to be frank with you. It was either get this video out today or do deep research on Klaudia Sygula. And I feel like I probably would have drawn the same conclusion, that I'm just going to take the favorite in this one. Sygula's making her UFC debut on short notice. Melissa Mullins did not look great against Norcorn all last time out. When we picked against her, I believe she was favored in that fight, which was kind of crazy to me. We know what she wants to do. She wants to get the fight to the mat. She wants to stay on top. She wants to be busy in top position, land her ground and pound, do all that good stuff. Physicality, strength, wrestling, aggression. That's what wins fights in these divisions. We saw that with Erin Blanchfield last week. She's getting pieced up for the first 10 minutes of the fight and decides, no, I'm just going to go now. She ends up winning that fight, ends up stealing that fight from Rose Namajunas, who was firmly in control. Didn't take much more for Rose to win that fight, and Erin Blanchfield just said, no, I want it more, and I'm going to impose my will. And that's what I think Melissa Mullins probably does here. But again, I don't even know who this other person is. And if that upsets you and you're watching, I understand. My job is to kind of do my research on all these fights. I didn't have time to look too much into this fight, so that's on me. But I'll take Melissa Mullins to win. I'll take her by decision. I like my chances. Moving on. Next, we're looking at a fight between Gaston Bolaños. He's fighting Cortavious Romious this week. Cortavious Romious coming off a win on Contender Series. The dude fights in a super aggressive fashion, and I think that he can make Gaston Bolaños very uncomfortable this week. You go back and watch some of his fights, this guy just lets his hands go, and he's coming at you hard, fast, and he's looking to get you to the mat. And when he's in top position, he's very good. The guy's super strong, very athletic, very compact little man. But as a result, he is a handful, and he's super strong because of it. Now, on the other side, Gaston Bolaños coming off of that loss to Marcus Magny. I think the jury is still out on Gaston Bolaños because this guy came in, he was supposed to be the bee's knees, not just in the UFC, but in MMA in general. Lots of Muay Thai experience. When he did show up in the UFC against Aaron Phillips, he put it on Aaron Phillips, beat him every round, looked good in that fight. But the power coming from Marcus Magny was just too much. He just kept getting tagged and tagged and tagged. And he showed good toughness in that fight. Early on, he was eating some of the best shots that Marcus Magny was throwing out there, but it just became too much later in that fight. And I think that's where Cortavious Romious can really pull away, because Gaston Bolaños, if he can keep the feet, can keep the fight at his range, I think he's the better striker, but I don't think that he's going to go out there and knock out Romious. And he's going to have to deal with a lot of takedowns and forward pressure, and I just feel like the Teemu Topuria is not going to be able to withstand all that forward pressure for 3 full rounds. But when you look at the style that each of these guys brings, in a have-to-have-it kind of moment, I would much rather have Romious on my side than Gaston Bolaños, so I'm going to take him to win. I think he just keeps that high level of activity, does a better job of mixing the martial arts. Romious is going to be looking for takedowns while Bolaños is relegated to just striking. And I think Bolaños is going to have his moments, but I think Romious is going to do more over the 15 minutes to get it done. So give me Cortavious Romious to make good on his UFC debut. I'm going to take him by decision. Lastly, we have a fight between Tresean Gore. He's fighting Antonio Trocoli this week. Trocoli probably better on the mat. He is taller. He is longer. He's got a little bit more experience, although I don't think it's great experience. But you just can't help but be unimpressed with what you've seen from him on the biggest stage. Like against Shara, the dude just wouldn't throw. He's flip-flopped all different weight classes. He was supposed to fight at 205. He fought at welterweight for a long time. Now he's fighting at 185. He won on Contender Series, then popped right after. The dude's kind of a mess. And then the other side, Tresean Gore is still just trying to figure it out. He's early in his career, 30 years old, but only 6 fights in. And injuries have kept him out of action. He's had 3 UFC fights. He's pulled out of 3 UFC fights with injury. So he's a hard guy to trust. I don't really love to bet on him. I don't think that he's all that good. I don't think that he wins a lot of fights in the UFC, but I think he could beat Antonio Trocoli. I think we have the better athlete and the physically stronger fighter in Tresean Gore, and Trocoli just no power in those hands. He's got all that leverage you would want, those nice long arms, that big long frame, and I just don't think that there's anything on them. And Tresean Gore is going to be throwing a lot of power back his way. He's also going to be looking for takedowns. I think Trocoli's going to invite the takedowns, thinking that he can get a submission here, and he's got, again, those long limbs, might be able to throw up a triangle or something like that, but I would like to think that Tresean Gore defensively is in a good spot. I went back and forth on this one a few times, but when you watch Trocoli fight, there's just not enough there on film for you to confidently say, yeah, this guy as an underdog is probably going to get it done. So I'll take Tresean Gore to get back on track, get in the win column, move to 5-2, and hopefully start putting together some more consistent outings. Hopefully he gets in there like 2 or 3 times in 2025. Give me Tresean Gore to win this fight. Give me Gore to win by decision. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, check the links in the description. I'll see you later in the week for DFS. Let's go.